Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Hey everyone, welcome to the OWR Wisconsin Revolution podcast. I am really excited about this podcast. We have some really good news and we have a lot to talk about when it comes to national politics. I am joined with my co-host, Will Walter. How you doing today, Will?
I'm doing well, Andre. I can't complain. How are you?
I am doing great. So the first thing I want to talk about is the changes within OWR. So if some of you been involved with OWR or stayed up to date on what's been going on, we've had some changes on the employment side and also on the leadership side. So most of our regional staff members, they have resigned to look for new work. And we also had changes in the executive director position. So for me, the board has appointed me, Andre Walton, to the executive director position. And I'm really excited about this opportunity because it gives us a fresh start to really put a new vision in for OWR. I think we've been severely lacking on bringing new young talent into this organization. And I believe the vision that we're approaching with now is really going to put the effort in the first foot forward on bringing in young new talent. But yeah, I'm also excited about the team that we're putting together. We'll be announcing that shortly, but I think this team that we're putting together is a number of young, energetic, smart individuals that I'm excited to work with. And I think they have the vision and passion to really fight for this political revolution. So yeah, I'm really excited to be bringing in new young talent. And I think changing and diversifying what OWR stands for is really going to be important for the change in this organization. So yeah, Will, what are your thoughts on the new changes within OWR?
I think it's fantastic that we're going to have an avenue for some of the passionate, energetic young people to kind of channel their passion in a more, I don't want to say elegant manner, because I absolutely love a lot of the good trouble that we're seeing a lot of young people getting into, whether it's via TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. A lot of the young people who have grown up in and around technology are so good at using it to their advantage. They're walking circles around these geriatric status quo politicians and lobbyists, and we've seen it a lot with, for example, with the tip line for abortions in Texas, that just how skilled a lot of these young people are able to kind of mess with the system and the status quo. And I think if we both foster and nurture that skill set, but also provide an avenue for legitimate organizing, that the sky's the limit.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited about it too. I think one thing that I plan on truly sticking to is truly challenging the powers that be. I think with a lot of groups that they tend to be mouthpieces for the Democratic Party, or they just kind of stay lockstep in line with them. But I think we can truly be that organization who challenges the Democratic Party to truly represent the people and change the face of politics. And I think with bringing in young individuals who are energetic and excited about changing the political system, we can hold their feet to the fire. And I don't see us being mouthpiece of the Democratic Party. So that's one of my biggest goals. And I think bringing in new, young, energetic talent is the way to start doing that. But yeah, so I'm really excited about this near future and with the changes we have coming. But that's enough about the leadership changes. Let's talk about what we came here to talk about. So one of the big stories that recently just happened was the Joe Biden administration allowed the unemployment benefits to collapse. And that happened right around Labor Day, which is just big FU to everybody.
It was the weekend of Labor Day. Yeah,
exactly. Which is just a big FU, in my opinion, to labor in general, because let's think about the parameters around this. There are about 35 million people in America who are benefiting from the unemployment benefits, who essentially are being kicked off without an alternative. And I think that's extremely I think that's a extremely bad decision to allow it to collapse because, for one, the pandemic isn't over. In fact, it's getting worse. There has been talks about there's a new variant called the Mu variant, which is supposed to be more transmissible, more deadly, and is way more resistant to the vaccine. So we're going to see increases in vaccination if you're forcing people back into work, and especially into jobs that are not requiring like COVID guidelines, not requiring masks. So we're going to see increases in the pandemic. And as a result of that, we're going to see more deaths. So I think it's very unplanned and uninsightful that they're letting these benefits collapse. But coupled with the fact that they're letting the benefits collapse is the fact that the moratorium has ended for housing. So not only are you seeing benefits collapse, but you're seeing you're going to see more people kicked out of their house. So they're going to be kicked out of their house, no unemployment benefits, or if they're on unemployment and they were using that to pay their bills, then they can't pay their bills, and then they're going to get kicked out of their house. So I think we're going to see some serious like Great Recession / Great Depression levels of devastation coming up. And I think this is going to really be bad for Democrats in the midterms because, I mean, traditionally speaking, Democrats or whatever party is in power at the time don't do very well in the midterms. And I think this is just kind of putting the cherry on top for the Democratic Party because not only are you not doing well as far as approval rating because not much is getting done, like the infrastructure hasn't been passed, the reconciliation bill hasn't been passed, but you're also kicking people off of unemployment benefits that was actually lifting the standard of living, and people are getting kicked out of their houses. And people are going to remember that during the midterms, and they're not going to come out to vote. And as a result, Joe Biden's going to lose his majority. And people are going to make up all these excuses why Joe Biden can't get things done, X, Y, and Z.
It's Bernie Sanders' fault.
Yeah, and we know it wasn't progressive's fault. It wasn't Russia. It wasn't all these outside external entities that you can't really explain. It's the fault of the Democratic Party for inaction. So yeah, Will, I know you've heard about the story. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about what's been going on when it comes to unemployment?
Well, in this situation, actually, I'm a big believer in giving credit where credit is due, and I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the party as a whole in this situation. There's a handful of, they're called moderate Democrats, but I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. They're essentially Republicans in Democrats' clothing, and they're on the payroll of some of the largest conservative financial donators in the country that are kind of holding a lot of the Biden agenda back. I think one of the important concepts that you touched on when referring to the unemployment benefits ending is the pandemic's effect on it. I don't understand how or why they could possibly have come to this conclusion, but there is a statistically significant chunk of the American population and American leadership that do seem to believe the pandemic is over, which is remarkable considering every measure of data we have disproves that. Cases are rising at numbers that we haven't seen since the middle of 2020. Deaths are at a high that they have been throughout the entire pandemic, and that's with about 65 to 70% of American adults fully vaccinated. There's just so much still going on in regards to the global health crisis that we are currently facing, that to end the only means that a large chunk of the population had to sustain themselves, especially over Labor Day weekend, a holiday dedicated to the workers who have united and fought for so many of the amenities that everyday Americans take for granted today. It's disgusting, and I don't see how this couldn't get significantly worse when you consider as well that, what other big event happens around Labor Day weekend? Kids are going back to school, and children under 12 are still unable to get vaccinated. So just not even counting the vaccination numbers of the increasingly transmissible Delta and Mu variant hitting the unvaccinated population and the vaccinated population with some of the breakthrough cases. Now, they are not nearly as severe, which is one of the incredibly important reasons you get a vaccine, but they do exist, which means that community spread is still growing, and now you're going to take hundreds of thousands of American children and pack them tightly into school buses and classrooms. And if there's one thing kids are known for, it's being very very safe and understanding why they have to follow rules even though the rules are not explained to them. The kids are going to be over the top aggressive in their social distancing, and I mean, come on, we all know how kids are. They're a melting pot of viruses and germs and disease when we're not in a global pandemic. So I'm terrified. We're seeing some of the student numbers across the country testing positive have just blown up, and this means that there's a statistically significant amount of teachers that are also testing positive. We're seeing some school districts that have lost, and I don't mean lost in terms of like getting sick. I believe Miami-Dade County said that 15 school teachers have already died since school began for them, which was in the middle of August. Now, if we extrapolate those numbers to all of America, where school generally starts the week after Labor Day, we're in for a pretty devastating next week or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and to be fair, Joe Biden isn't all to blame for like what's going on with the COVID situation, because we have a lot of governors, state, county governments, really not taking the pandemic serious, mainly because of political partisan reasons. And
those conservative governors are loving the recent vaccine mandate that Biden put out, because they understand that they're killing off their voter base. They understand that a deadly pandemic is going to be disastrous for their approval rating and thus disastrous for their re-election campaigns.
Exactly.
But now that Biden is willing to step up and be the bad guy for them, they can continue playing the culture war issues and acting like they're so angry and frustrated at Joe Biden for overstepping his boundaries. But in reality, they're loving this. It lets them paint him as the villain instead of the heat coming down on them, which it has been in many of these aggressively conservative states.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I think where my criticism still lies is that by letting these unemployment benefits collapse, it's just going to make the situation worse. But I think when it comes to, labor, because it is connected, letting the unemployment benefits connect to, labor rights. Joe Biden kind of came out and did this whole speech about why unions are important and why it's important that we allow unions to unionize. However, I think there has been a little bit of conflict of interest when you look at the actions that Joe Biden has made in the past with actually supporting unions. For example, he obviously voted for NAFTA. Delaware is a state that is super corporate and not really known for workers' rights in general. So, I mean, it's just kind of the irony of that. Just wanted to point that out. But I think one way that you could alleviate this whole situation is to really reassure people financially that they'll be okay. So obviously, we're going to talk about Afghanistan a little bit later, but we spent trillions of dollars in that country. I think it's okay to spend that on your citizens. So like having an emergency UBI during the length of the pandemic. The reason why the unemployment there's issues with that is because it's not universal. I think when it's universal, people are less willing to combat it. And we know this from like Medicaid. Medicaid is not universal, but
student loan debt would be a good example of that. The people who are like, well, I paid off my student loan debt. Okay, congratulations, you're 70 years old and you just finished paying off your debt. That doesn't mean that other people should have to suffer as well.
Exactly, and I think when you make things universal, people are a lot less hesitant to combat that system because it's normally way more popular, and you have to support the businesses obviously that are going to take a hit, especially the small businesses, because obviously small businesses are a lot less likely to have the capital to sustain, obviously, any hard hits from a pandemic. We've seen that with like small bars and things like that, and restaurants. But yeah, I think, as far as like the pandemic goes, I think whether, where you putting the blame at, it's always going to hurt the top the most. So even though Republican governments are letting people die in their states, and they're going crazy about mask mandates and stuff like that, the fact that people are still dying and that this pandemic is not under control, because that's essentially what Democrats ran on, is that they're going to get the pandemic under control, and as of now, that's just not the fact, and that's not the matter. I think it is going to have ramifications during the midterms. One way I think would help this situation is if the Democrats do pass, the budget and budget reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill, and you also do a lot more to really help out workers. And I just think it's lacking severely on that end. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen during the midterms. I know here in Wisconsin, I really don't know, because for one, Wisconsin is kind of like that flip-flop state. You really don't know what it's going to do, especially on state politics. Like they might elect a Republican governor, or they might elect a Democratic governor based on how the winds are flowing. And obviously Mandela Barnes is running for Senate, and I'm not sure how much charisma or political power Tony Evers has to win a re-election. And I think if Joe Biden's approval numbers are down, or he's not doing very well, I think that's just going to hurt the state of Wisconsin. So that's why I think this whole ramifications of the unemployment, the Afghanistan war, everything that's kind of happening right now that is making, obviously looking bad on the Democrats, is just going to have ramifications in the battleground states like Wisconsin. So I mean, did you have any more thoughts on that?
Well, I do think, first of all, I guess in terms of the governor race, a certain Lieutenant Governor, Rebecca Kleefisch, announced that she was running for governor quite literally yesterday. She was the Lieutenant Governor for Scott Walker's administration, and that's terrifying. Wisconsin is, with how heavily gerrymandered we're one Rebecca Kleefisch away from being the deep south of the North. We're staring down the barrel of 1850s governance. If we have a governor like Kleefisch, we're going to be passing similar abortion laws to Texas, similar mask laws to Florida. It's going to be quite scary to find ourselves in that situation. But like you said, we very well might. Midterms historically tend to go the opposite of the party in power, and if the Democrats can't get anything accomplished, they can run on fear and the bad boogeyman Republicans all they want. And while a lot of those statements are accurate, there's a sizable chunk of the population who don't pay close enough attention to politics for that to really matter. They want to see, what have you done for them? What are you capable of doing for them? And if the answer to those questions are, well, you've had power for the last 2 years and done nothing, then why would this voter think that anything's going to change? I think the party itself needs to start getting aggressive on some of their own problem members. A certain senator from West Virginia and a certain senator from Arizona come to mind, where I don't understand why the party is not going to these states and kind of actively campaigning against these senators. Put pressure on these senators with their local constituents. Go and prove to these senators that the people of their state want this kind of stuff done. Now, with Senator Sinema, that might not matter. She doesn't seem to give a rat's ass what the people of Arizona think. I think she seems to be content with, well, I won my one term. I'll forever be known as former U.S. Senator, and then I can get some cushy lobbying gig as soon as I get primaried in my next election. But you got to do something. You got to try something. Bernie Sanders has worked so hard to get the floor of this package at $3.5 trillion, and now you see James Clyburn going on CNN and talking about how, well, 3.5 million is the ceiling and there's still room to be negotiated. Like, no, dude, stop pushing the goddamn goalposts. People need help, and they need help now. And if help doesn't come, yeah, the Democrats are in a lot of trouble in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the good points that you're making right now. It's not only the Republican Party undermining what Joe Biden is doing, but he has obviously people in his own party undermining him. But that kind of segues what we're going to talk about now, and that's Afghanistan. I mean, I know I've been extremely critical of Joe Biden because he's backtracked on a lot of policies that he ran on. But in this case, he came through on his promise to end the Afghanistan war. And I commend him for that. I think, everybody, especially in my age range, is happy about the end of this war because we've kind of grew up knowing war our whole lives. I think when we invaded Afghanistan, I was maybe 6 years old. So I've pretty much never known this country outside of a war. So I think it took a lot of courage and strength for Joe Biden to pull out of Afghanistan, despite all the pressure that he got from the media, from inside, the military industrial complex, people in his own party, the Republican Party.
It's funny to see how aggressive the media has come down on Joe Biden from a united standpoint. Like it's not just left-leaning media that's being aggressive on him, or right-leaning media like we come to expect. It's every major media corporation aggressively countering the Afghanistan narrative. Why? Because there is so much money to be made in war. And it's remarkable to see Biden finally do something that's, I don't think just good. I think it's incredible. I think that's the kind of decision that could define a presidency. He finally does something that's excellent for the country and gets lambasted for it. Now, I know a lot of people who would want to criticize the logistical execution of withdrawal from Afghanistan. That's a whole nother topic entirely that I don't think I'm a credible source on. I don't know how you would properly do something as large as withdrawing an entire nation's military from a country like that. So I don't even want to comment on that because I don't know. I couldn't have done any better. Let's put it that way. There's no way in hell that I could have done a superior job than how the Biden administration did. With that being said, the logistics of withdrawal is not all on Joe Biden. There is a ton of moving parts to be involved in a situation like that. I think the decision itself to finally get out of Afghanistan, to finally stop throwing away $300 million of taxpayer dollars per day, is, you said it best. It's very courageous to be able to stand up and do that when you know that you're going to be bombarded from all sides of media for that decision to withdraw.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that people are continuing to miss about the withdrawal is, like, if you look at historical context, when people kind of leave these interventionist wars or quagmire type wars, like, it wasn't good when the Soviet Union pulled out of Afghanistan. It wasn't like a pretty pullout. It wasn't a pretty pullout when we left Vietnam, or when the French left Vietnam. So, like, there's really, if you think about it in a historical context, thinking part of a way of it, there's not an actual way to leave a losing war that's going to be pretty. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. But my criticism is not necessarily of Joe Biden, but like all the war hawks who try to come up and spin ways on why we should continue to stay in war. And a lot of the reasons why they explain why we should stay there doesn't make sense at all. So, for example, I think I see Mitt Romney, he was on like CNN, and one of the reasons why he said we should stay there is basically like to secure the legacy of the people who fought there and died there, or to protect, women's rights. And the reason why these explanations are so dumb to me is because, one, we were never there to protect women's rights. Let's be honest. We invaded there because we were attacked on 9/11. We wanted to get Osama bin Laden, who was killed 10 years ago. So why are we still there? And to secure the legacy of the people who died there, the reason why that also does not make sense to me, because by staying there, you're literally saying, okay, I want to sacrifice more lives to protect the legacy of the lives we lost. Like, what?
We're gonna honor our dead veterans by creating more dead veterans.
Exactly. Like
what, dude? Like,
what kind of logical leap?
Me?
Yeah, like what kind of logical leap is that? So like it doesn't make sense. A lot of the excuses that people are making, it's trying to play on the humanitarian feelings that people have about other people, which I understand that, like, but they're using it as weaponization to play on the humanitarian feelings that people have instead of actually thinking about the logical conclusions of what they're doing. It's just an argument for endless war to endless spin. But the real reason why that they want to stay there is what you said. It made a lot of people rich. It made the military the military contractors extremely wealthy. It made a lot of people in Afghanistan extremely wealthy. I mean, there was reports about how the Afghanis would take the stuff that the American military give to them and sell it on the black market, and then they'll get rich. So there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of money being made, and that's what it really was about. And that's why I'm so glad that we got out, because we were just wasting taxpayers' money all the while. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. So that's what it was really about. So that's why I'm happy Joe Biden pulled out. Obviously, I still have my other criticisms on him, but on this particular move, he should be rewarded for it. And I think, all the bad faith attacks that he's getting from all sides is just unjust, in my opinion.
Like I said before, you got to give credit where credit's due, and in this situation, credit is due. He finally had the guts to pull out.
Exactly.
Trump said he would do it. He never did. Obama floated the idea around. He never did. It's one thing to say you're going to do it. It's another thing to actually do it. Let me throw some numbers at you, Andre, that I was digging out the other day. So September 17th of 2021. First of all, keep in mind that on the morning of Tuesday, September 11th, after that, Wall Street was shut down for the rest of the week. So September 17th is the closest I could get any information for. The stock price of Northrop Grumman Corporation opened at $44.72. As of August 20th, which was when I was looking up this information, $363. The Boeing Company, September 17th, 2021, $35.65 a share. As of August 20th, $212.67. Lockheed Martin, September 17th, 2001, $46 a share. August 20th, 2021, $357.17. General Dynamics Corp., $43.25 on September 17th, 2001. August 20th, 2021, $197.30. Raytheon Technologies in 2001, $17.62. As of August 20th, $84.05. You're looking at a stock return for Lockheed Martin, 1,236%. Northrop Grumman, 1,196%. Boeing, 975%. General Dynamics, 625%. Raytheon, 331% return on investment. That is insane. The value of the stocks of these military industrialist corporations have gone through the roof. Defense contractors made trillions of dollars off of this war. And it's astonishing to see anybody defend that in good faith. But these same multinational media conglomerates, they made tons and tons of money off of this situation too. So it makes sense that those who benefited would kind of stand together and keep pushing the elongation of this money-making machine as long as they possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the corporate media won't tell you. They won't tell you about, the cash cow that this war was making for a lot of these industries and people. But that just shows you right there why all the weaponization of identity politics and secure the rights of women is all BS, because all the while they're making all this money, they're selling weapons to Saudi Arabia. And if you don't know about Saudi Arabia, they have a terrible track record when it comes to the human rights of women. I mean, women aren't even, well, they're allowed to drive now, but for the most part, women have horrible rights in Saudi Arabia. I mean, any women who try to speak out and have activist activities, they're locked up, they're put away. They can't even really like do anything on their own. They usually have to be accompanied by a man. So like the fact that they're saying we have to protect women's rights in Afghanistan is complete BS, because if they actually meant that, we would in no way ally ourselves with Saudi Arabia. So whenever somebody says, hey, we have to do this for women, trust me, it's a bad faith argument, and they don't actually mean it. So just keep that in mind. And all the other arguments that people are using, for example, they believe, I think for some people, it's more about pride, because they hate to lose, and that's really what it's about. But if you can't win a war against one of the poorest countries on earth after 20 years, trust me, you will never get your pride restored after that. It's just a fact of the matter. So like, you have to come to terms that like, yeah, we lost. And, you know, America hasn't won a war since what, like the 1950s or something? Or the 1940s?
Probably since World War II.
Yeah, because they didn't win the Korean War technically, because Korea was split in two. They didn't win Vietnam.
I don't like looking at wars as like a win-loss either, because then you're putting you're kind of like justifying the needless death and violence and other incredibly destructive values that a war would put forth. But
yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, there's no winners in war, but like statistically speaking, based on our track record, we shouldn't be continuing to wage endless wars on countries, because we clearly aren't effective at doing it.
And we aren't doing it for, I mean, I don't think there's any reason to justify war outside of, you know, maybe defending, you know, if a country's committing genocide on a large chunk of their population or something, human rights abuse, then defending innocent human lives does have value. I think a lot of people would hear that statement and say, "Whoa, that's what we were doing in Afghanistan." Okay, no, it's not. We wouldn't be turning around and endlessly drone striking civilian locations, including famously when Barack Obama drone struck a hospital. You don't do that if your goal is to protect the sovereignty of human life.
Exactly.
That was never the American goal with this war.
Exactly.
It was retribution for 9/11 and controlling some of the incredibly valuable resources that some of these Middle East countries have available, that American companies can swoop in and take for themselves.
I 100% agree with that. I mean, yeah, obviously, you know, it's hard to say we shouldn't have went to war because of World War II, because obviously America was directly attacked and the Nazis were objectively evil people. But every war since then, it's always has been about American imperialism and to give more access to American anytime, like, for example, what's been going on, like with Venezuela, like there's been a lot of war hawking around that. You know, that isn't about humanitarian rights, because if they actually wanted or cared about humanitarian rights, they would lift the sanctions that they have on that country, which is objectively just as bad as war, because you're starving people. You're literally starving people.
It's economic war.
Exactly. So like, yeah, I mean, just going back to Afghanistan, we objectively know that it's good that we're getting out. But with all of my all of my admiration that Joe Biden pulled out of this war, we still have to be honest about the fact that American empire has not ended. We're still in Syria. We're still bombing in Somalia. We're still supplying weapons.
We have military bases all over the globe still, in the vast majority of countries.
So, like, he gets a little credit for it. I'm not going to lie. But American imperialism has not ended. I mean, it's still business as usual. So he gets a little bit of credit, but at the end of the day, things have not fundamentally changed as long as we continue to have bases all over the world and fueling literally the overthrow of governments all over the world. So,
things will not fundamentally change. Where have I heard that before?
Exactly. So, like, yeah, there's some good in this, but we got to be real with you. It's still not where it needs to be. But this is more than what any other president did since George Bush, which, you know, we have to give him credit for that at least. So that's the thing.
Even just from a financial perspective, so many conservatives want to harp on the cost of everything, right? So let's take the insanely conservative number and say that the Afghan war cost American taxpayers about $2 trillion. Well, we could end homelessness for $20 billion. We could provide free insulin for all diabetics for $40 billion. Universal pre-K would be about $60 billion. SNAP for 40 million Americans, $80 billion. Universal 4-year college, $70 billion. Canceling all medical debt, about $150 billion. Canceling all student loan debt, about $1.6 trillion. Those are all things that we could accomplish with the, again, incredibly conservative $2 trillion estimate of the Afghan war. Now, that's not even considering the fact that the United States military budget for the fiscal year is about $780 billion. So that hasn't gone down at all, even with the Afghanistan withdrawal. Americans love to talk about how are we going to pay for it? Where's all this money going to come from? How are we going to cover it? We have the money. We've just been pouring it down the throats of the military-industrial complex and some of these massive multinational defense contractors.
Exactly. It's it's all about priorities, and in this country, we obviously prioritize war over taking care of our own citizens at home. I mean, Tupac said it best: "Got money for wars, but can't feed the poor." I mean, there's no more simple way of saying it.
Smedley Butler called war a racket in the 1930s, right?
Yep. There's like a lot of good movies out there or not good movies, but like a lot of good skits out there that kind of, is satirical of the reasons why we go to war. But one of my favorite ones, and I think I brought this up before, is when Dave Chappelle was parodying George Bush, and he was calling himself Black Bush, and he's just like, he's in the one of the office, and they're getting interviewed, and they're just like, yeah, a lot of people are saying you guys are going to Iraq for oil, and he's like, oil what? And it's just like, it's hilarious because I think it's very obvious that to a lot of people, especially comedians, that this is not about humanitarianism. And I think in order to call it out, you have to have a little fun with it sometimes. But just want to throw that out. That has nothing to do with it. But
honestly, I think even the most naive people recognize that it's not about humanitarian purposes.
I would hope so.
You gotta be real ignorant to not only human nature, but like the functional exploitation of the American empire to actually think like, yeah, no, we're going in to help save people. We want to be the good guys and protect life. Like, dude, we don't even protect life at home. We're purposely letting people die to a virus that we have a vaccine for. Like, we don't care about life, dude. Get out of here.
Exactly. But yeah, man, I mean, overall, there's some serious things that need to be addressed when it comes to the COVID crisis and obviously endless war. But obviously, we're going to continue to fight against oppressive nature of governments, and our fight is going to continue here at our Wisconsin Revolution. So if you guys are interested, come and join the revolution. We got some big plans ahead. And if you're interested, go and sign up at ourwisconsinrev.com. And you can sign up to be a member. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year in one sum. And we would, love to have new, young, energetic people join the revolution with us. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the changes and the new upcoming ideas that we have. And we hope you guys can join us. Anything else for you, Will?
I think that covers it. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day. Remember how many, hardworking laborers fought for the rights that you would likely take for granted today. The 5-day work week, the 40-hour work week, weekends. These type of things would not exist if hardworking Americans didn't fight for this in our very recent past. So, stay passionate, stay aggressive, and let's not tolerate this anymore.
100%. So if you guys are enjoying the podcast, go ahead and like and subscribe. We are really looking forward to continuing this podcast and talking about the issues that, are affecting our society. So have a great weekend, everybody, and have a great day.
So we always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything